Did you know there are 14 reasons why this fantasy book is similar to Game of Thrones? And even better, there's 3 epic reasons why I think it's better than Game of Thrones. In this spoiler-free fantasy book review for The Seeker's Wrath by P.S. Davies, I'll tell you that and a couple of bonuses in just a sec. This is the Birger Review. Hi Tales Driver. I divided this book review into 5 different sections. 14 quick reasons why The Seeker's Wrath feels similar to George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones. 7 quick examples of how 𝗕𝗏𝗏, world of The Seeker's Wrath. 3 quick reasons why I think The Seeker's Wrath is better than Game of Thrones. Direct link to The Seeker's Wrath and a fantasy-themed bonus video, a similar feel to Game of Thrones that you can relax to while reading The Seeker's Wrath. And best of all, the 3rd reason why I think The Seeker's Wrath is better than Game of Thrones is literally gonna blow your mind. It sure did for me. I'd even like to go so far as calling this one an anti-G.R.R. Martin reason. So be sure to stick around for that. 14 reasons it's similar to Game of Thrones. The main quest of The Seeker's Wrath revolves around uniting 2 regions of the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗏 against a common enemy by using diplomacy and understanding. This main quest has 14 story themes or reasons that makes The Seeker's Wrath feel very similar to Game of Thrones. Reason 1. Society in The Seeker's Wrath is divided into the West and the East, as seen by the impressively detailed, realistically looking world map of the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗏, much like the regions of Westeros and Essos from Game of Thrones. Reason 2. The character duality of politics versus brute force, much like King's Landing versus the rest of Westeros and Essos from Game of Thrones. In The Seeker's Wrath, this duality manifests in the 2 main characters, and they are Captain Saelong, grey-haired and collected and experienced strategist from the south, represents politics and understanding, and the blonde, feisty and young barbarian warrioress 𝗕𝗢𝗢 from the north, who represents brute force and savagery. Their interactions and character developments are an integral part of the story in The Seeker's Wrath. Reason 3. High stakes. Whether the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗏 will be united or not solely depends on Captain Saelong's and his party's actions. As he once said himself, "If we fail here, the Order won't survive it." In comparison, some high stakes in Game of Thrones are which kingdom will claim the Iron Throne and thus rule all the 7 kingdoms, which main character will survive and who will die, and will we survive the years-long upcoming winter. Reason 4. The North, where the barbarian warrioress 𝗕𝗢𝗢 comes from, has a prominent role in the story, just like the Stark family's North in Game of Thrones. Reason 5. Cruel and sadistic scenes of violence and scenes of warriors accustomed to war, much like in Game of Thrones. Main difference being that The Seeker's Wrath has less scenes of cruel and sadistic violence compared to Game of Thrones, which I personally think is a good thing, since I don't particularly enjoy too much violence and cruelty. Reason 6. War strategies and war tactics, like for example castle sieges, hand-to-hand combat, naval battles, and the sea. Reason 7. Pirates and pirate ships. much like 𝗕𝗲𝗏 𝗧 or the Ironborn from Game of Thrones. Speaking of Game of Thrones, I really can't wait to reveal the mind-blowing anti-J.R. Martin reason to you a bit later in this video, and the bonus video that you can relax to while reading The Seeker's Wrath. Reason 8. Word strategies and tactics, like interactions and conversations with those in power through diplomacy, persuasion, or bargaining, or by gaining powerful allies. Again echoing King's Landing from Game of Thrones. Reason 9. Betrayal and loyalty, like for example, a mysterious conspiracy plot of hidden betrayal against those in power, or the loyalty to one's leader or land. Reason 10. Family, both regarding loss of family and loved ones, as well as the need to protect one's family from various threats. A theme that is very prominent the whole story of Game of Thrones as well. Reason 11. Found family bonding with an animal companion feels similar to the dire wolves that the Stark family bonds with in Game of Thrones, or when Daenerys bonds with her dragons. Reason 12. From being treated like an outcast, being treated like an equal, echoing Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. Reason 13. Infiltration, like for example, secretly sneaking into the house of a powerful individual to search for evidence. Reason 14. Kidnappings of royalty or important characters with threats of dire consequences, some that may even affect the whole land of 𝗕𝗏𝗏. Kidnappings or abductions of royalty or other characters is a recurring theme in Game of Thrones, like when Tyrion Lannister is captured by Catelyn Stark and forced to stand trial, or when Lyanna Stark is abducted by the Targaryens, an act that even sparks rebellion and war. Since you like Game of Thrones, you most likely also enjoy darker stories. Pause this video and visit BirgerTales.com to grab some of my free dark fantasy stories in which you play the main character. And now, 7 examples of giving life to 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏, the writing. To begin with, The Seeker's Wrath has balanced chapter lengths, keeping them around 5 spreads throughout most of the book, which makes the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏 feel very accessible. Next, 7 quick examples of 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏's writing. Example 1. Gritty dialogue, like this warrior from the north making a comment before the siege of a castle. I smell piss in their blood. If we crack that gate, they scatter like snow hairs. Or a pirate's cruel humor as he talks to a man in thick leather armor. Do you understand me? Or do I need to carve it into your flesh? He let the words linger, then added, Not that it would make any difference, you sack of leather. Example 2. Strategic and tactical monologues, like this military leader that analyzes enemy forces. This wasn't some wild gang thrown together by desperation. It was a force, measured, controlled, and trained. Someone had built this discipline into them and shaped it with purpose. Or when a military leader analyzes a castle's walls just before a siege. Charging the walls now meant death. The fortress was built for one purpose alone, defense. From their watchtowers, archers and crossbowmen would rain death on any force foolish enough to storm the gates. Man, the anti-J.R.R. Martin reason I mentioned to you earlier, it's really gonna blow your mind. Can't wait to reveal it to you later in this video. And don't forget the bonus video. It's perfect to relax to while reading the Seeker's Wrath. Example 3. Detailed and vivid environmental descriptions, like this vivid description of the city of Lucarion. Tilted roofs shimmered in the slanting light, catching hues of rust and gold, as if the sun itself were bleeding out over Lucarion. The scent of roasting meat and spider cider drifted from the city's main avenue, blending with the briny air from the coast. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer rang out in steady rhythm, lost beneath the distant echo of ship bells. Or this description, for when a stealthy ship sails on the sea in the middle of the night, the sea pressed close around them, vast and silent, as if listening to the smallest sound. Darkness weighed on the water, unmoving and watchful. The air grew tighter, heavier with each breath. Not one man moved, not a whisper passed between them. Even the sails seemed to hold their breath. Example 4. Characters' personalities described through their appearances, like this description of one of the most politically powerful men in 𝗕𝗏𝗄. He was tall, his dark hair streaked with grey, framing a face that was striking in its confidence. Sharp-featured, clean-shaven, and composed. His green eyes carried the quiet assurance of a man accustomed to power, his movement deliberate, effortless. Dressed in Len's regal blue, trimmed with copper, he stood with the easy poise of one who knew the weight his words carried. Example 5. Great and exciting action scene descriptions, like when this character has just been hit by an arrow. She was down on one knee, her breath ragged, her left hand gripped the sword, her right hung limp at her side. The arrow still lodged deep in the muscle. The pain flared with every moment. Her axe was too far. She couldn't reach it. Example 6. Clever dialogue, like when someone asks this to a character that has very powerful hearing. You heard that? I hear most things. Example 7. While it's evident that P.S. Davies has put much craftsmanship into his writing, I think there's room for improvement regarding character names. It was sometimes hard to keep track of minor characters' names without a reminder who they were once they appeared later in the story. This could be remedied by adding something easy to remember that easily connects to the character in question. Are they allies with someone? Something about their background, title or profession? Small stuff like that. Other than that, well done on the writing, P.S. Davies. 3 reasons it's better than Game of Thrones, in my opinion. And be sure to stay for reason 3, the anti-G.R. Martin reason. It's gonna freaking blow your mind, I promise ya. And don't forget the relaxing bonus video that will enhance your reading of the Seeker's Wrath. Reason 1. There's more focus on magic. Some characters in the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗄 are called gifted. In turn, they have something called gifts, fittingly enough, which acts as the magic in the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗄. In Game of Thrones, there is magic, but mostly in the background. Here's some quick examples of magical gifts in the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗄. The ability to physically see others' gifts as burning flames. The gift to set one's skin on fire, immunity to pain, and godlike hearing, among others. Reason 2. Happier fates and endings. While the Seeker's Wrath contains its share of tragedy, cruelty, and injustice, it also has happy endings that are paired with feelings of powerful catharsis. Catharsis being the cleansing and restorative feeling one feels after surviving experiences of hardship, pain, or sorrow. In Game of Thrones, there is occasional catharsis, but seldom happy endings. But the Seeker's Wrath delivers just that, which alone makes me prefer the world of 𝗕𝗏𝗏 over that of Westeros and Essos. And now to reason 3 why I think the Seeker's Wrath is better than Game of Thrones. The anti-J.R.R. Martin reason is gonna blow your mind. But just before that, could you be awesome and hit the like button and the new hype button? Both buttons help this video to be discovered by more people here on YouTube, so I'd really appreciate it. The new hype button can also be used up to 3 times. So hit away. Thank you. You're awesome. Reason 3. The mind-blowing anti-J.R.R. Martin reason why I think the Seeker's Wrath is better than Game of Thrones. First need some context. Let me explain. The Seeker's Wrath can be read as a standalone book, since it's a self-contained story in its own right. But the Seeker's Wrath is also a prequel to an upcoming military fantasy book series of 3 books called The Essence Wars. And the release of book 1 in this series, An Envious God, releases as early as 30th of November 2025. And the best part is, as the author E.S. Davis himself puts it, readers do not need to worry about being J.R.R. Martined. Why, you ask? Reason 3. The mind-blowing anti-J.R.R. Martin reason why I think the Seeker's Wrath is better than Game of Thrones is the whole Essence Wars series has already been written, and all books will be released during 2026. Read the Seeker's Wrath here, and while you read the book, listen to this bonus video, a relaxing reading ambience. Apart from the Seeker's Wrath, do you know any other books like Game of Thrones? Comment below, and take care, Tales Triber.